If this has been the picture made in '68, it wouldn't have been a cult film.
If you're going to look at a movie called Night of the Living Dead, you might as well look at the first one. It's a lot better.
Ouch. So, yeah, unfortunately, back in the day, the Night of the Living Dead remake didn't get much love from critics and it failed to shatter any box office records. However, I recently revisited the remake to see how well it holds up, and guess what? It still kicks zombie ass.
I'm coming to get you, Barbara.
In 1990, horror icon George Romero and longtime friend and collaborator Tom Savini dared the impossible. They remade the classic 1968 Night of the Living Dead. This creative dream team made complete sense. Romero was a pioneer who broke new ground when he directed and co-wrote the original film with John Russo. For the remake, Romero updated the script for a modern generation. Tom Savini, another legend in the horror genre, famous for his special effects achievements, stepped in as director, which was fresh territory for him. The setup here mirrors the original. The undead have returned to life for unknown reasons, and they have a taste for human flesh. We follow 7 strangers forced to band together in a house in the Pennsylvania countryside. The question is, will the zombies get them, or will these people tear each other apart first?
They're coming right for us!
George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
The 1990 remake came about mostly due to financial reasons. Back in 1968, Romero was screwed over by a copyright oversight made by the film's original distributor, an error which led to Night of the Living Dead falling into public domain. So if you ever wondered why the original has had a ton of re-releases over the years, well, there you go. George Romero truly got the crappy end of the stick. Instead of enjoying the fruits of his labor from his landmark horror achievement, he endured a court battle over the film rights. By the time Romero won the lawsuit, the distributor was out of business, meaning collecting money was like getting blood from a stone. But this remake was a second chance to make things right for the legendary filmmaker. And the same can be said for Tom Savini. He was set to work on the special effects in the 1968 original, but he was called off to Vietnam, where he served as a combat photographer. An experience that provided him with grisly, real-world insight into the horrors that can be ravaged upon the human body. An experience he put to use in his special effects work. The problem is, remakes are always a gamble. In the case of Night of the Living Dead, unfortunately that gamble did not pay off. But nowadays horror fans have warmed up to this reimagining, and the movie has gained a cult following. So, what exactly did it get right?
Look, I don't need this, Cooper. I told you before, you want to go downstairs, go on. Get! You can be boss down there, I'm boss up here.
I think the first thing this film nailed was the cast. Across the board, everyone was solid. But if there's one reason alone to watch this movie, it's Tony Todd. Tony Todd is most famous to horror fans from the Candyman franchise. Here, he takes over as Ben, a pivotal and historic role originally portrayed by Dwayne Jones. Jones was one of the first African Americans to play a lead role in a mainstream horror, so the bar was set very high. But Tony Todd came through big time.
This is hell on earth.
As was the case in the original, Ben is a natural-born leader, a role especially important during a zombie apocalypse. Lawrence Fishburne and Eric LaSalle both tried out for the role of Ben, but Tony's audition was so impressive, Savini hired him instantly. Although a horde of the undead were attacking, Ben's biggest adversary was a fellow survivor, Harry Cooper, as played by Tom Towles.
Who the fuck gave you the right to decide for the rest of us?
This movie could have been titled Night of the Living Dead, Ben vs. Cooper, and it would have been accurate. These two spend a large portion of this movie killing each other. Their conflict makes an already terrible situation all the more grueling for everyone. Ben insists on boarding up the house and finding the keys to a truck outside so everyone can escape. Cooper refuses to help and just wants to hide down in the cellar with his wife and daughter who is suffering from a zombie attack. He's over-the-top combative, stubborn, violent toward his wife, and there's even racial tension tossed into the mix.
What about you, Mr. Ben? You don't exactly look like neighbors yourself.
So it's crystal clear Cooper is a danger to everyone. He also solidifies himself as the most annoying character thanks to grade school insults and name-calling.
You're crazy! You're out of your minds! Idiots! You lame brains! You bunch of yo-yos!
The focus on Ben and Cooper's intense rivalry works very well overall. Their battle highlights one of the themes of the film, the importance of working together during a crisis, which is easier said than done.
What a place to be stuck! In the middle of nowhere. Bunch of yo-yos!
The next major cast member I wanted to spotlight was Patricia Tallman as Barbara Todd. She does a great job here. The remake takes the character in an entirely new direction. In the original, Barbara was fairly meek from the onset. She's famously teased by her brother in the opening.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
And eventually attacked by the first of many zombies. Later, when everyone's struggling to fight off these reanimated corpses, Barbara remains mostly catatonic. When Romero wrote the script for the remake, he wisely allowed Tom Savini creative freedom.
Get away from her, you bitch!
After seeing Sigourney Weaver take down some xenomorphs and aliens, he wanted to see Barbara develop into a similar woman action hero. With that, we got a far more badass version of Barbara. She dumps the wimpy persona, puts on her big girl pants, and goes to war with the undead. What's great about Barbara is her progression is natural and grounded. She gradually finds her strength and strategizes how best to survive. But the roots of her character remain intact. While fighting her way through zombies, the trauma of this nightmare stays with her. And that makes her character all the more interesting, relatable, and someone to root for. Using the original film as a template was a smart move. Romero and John Russo's 1968 setup is already perfect.
For the love of God, Johnny.
They're horny, Barbara.
So the remake wisely stuck to the source material, but it was also open to change. And I guess these zombies were a little more horny.
They've been dead a long time.
There are curveballs and twists throughout that keep us guessing. For example, in the opening, we see what looks like a zombie lumbering behind Barbara in the cemetery. Based on the original, we expect that an attack is imminent. Instead, we get a swerve.
I'm sorry.
The man is just an injured victim. Seconds later, the real attack takes place and it's nasty as hell. This immediately signals that the remake will follow the general path of the original, but it's not going to be handcuffed to the original. This also means anything goes. Even the fate of all the players is up in the air. This unpredictability makes the remake all the more engaging.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Quick bit of fun trivia. In the remake, Barbara's brother, Johnny Todd, is played by horror legend Bill Moseley, who's probably best known for his work with Rob Zombie and, of course, Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I really dug the look of the zombies in the remake. These are the classic, tattered and torn, slow-moving zombies of old. They'll eat whatever they can get their hands on, meaning anything from a field mouse to human remains. The special effects were handled by John Volich, Everett Burrell, and a team of artists, all of whom brought the undead to life. Practical makeup effects were used throughout, which, as you all know, is right up my alley. My two favorite creations are the very first zombie that sneak attacks Barbara, and my second favorite is Uncle Reach. This guy is disturbing as hell. There's something about his size that just makes him feel all the more deadly. Also, I really like the clear, dead eyes that they used in a lot of the zombies. Tom Savini mentioned that by erasing the eyes of the zombies, they became soulless, and I agree. It's a subtle effect, but creepy and effective. So, I went through everything the remake got right, but what, if anything, did it get wrong? Thankfully, not much. My only gripe is the film is lacking in the gore department, especially in comparison to Romero's other entries in the Living Dead series, such as Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. The lack of gore was mostly intentional. The filmmakers reportedly used restraint to honor the original. However, there were deleted scenes which featured more violence and gore. Savini himself noted that with his name and Romero's name stamped on a remake, audiences were definitely expecting a lot more gore, but the remake is actually somewhat tame in that regard. In my view, keeping at least some of that gore in the remake would have given it more edge and improved the overall product. Then again, I never had to go to battle with the MPAA.
God damn you!
Tom Savini is on record as stating, shooting Night of the Living Dead was a horrendous experience. His books, Grand Illusions and Night of the Living Dead 90, the version you've never seen, contain storyboards he never got to bring to life due to lack of time. Sadly, Romero was also unable to be involved during the production because he was working on another project at the time. That left Tom Savini on his own against producers who undermined his vision of the film. Plus, Savini was also going through a divorce during the time. He's quoted as stating, "There was a lot of turmoil, we're lucky that we got what we did on the screen." Before I wrap things up, I am going to discuss the conclusion and my final thoughts. So, skip ahead to this timestamp if you don't want to hear spoilers related to the ending. By the time the sun rises, things have gotten ugly in this corner of the world. This is a bleak, post-apocalyptic landscape. We see survivors rounding up the undead, forcing them to fight, stringing them up, and piling them onto a zombie barbecue. As Romero's other installments of the Living Dead franchise have shown us, those who survive the zombie aftermath are a mixed bag to say the least.
What the hell are you talking about, Frankenstein?
So, was there any way to avoid this dark conclusion? That's tough to say, but the need for humanity to work together during times of extreme crisis is hammered home for our cast of strangers. Granted, even cooperation doesn't ensure survival in such nightmarish circumstances. However, constant disagreement and tearing each other apart never works. Our 7 players learned this lesson the hard way. Sadly, the battle between Ben and Cooper eventually reaches a boiling point after Cooper's daughter goes into full zombie mode.
No!
So, what was the best tactic to escape the horde of undead?
They're so slow. We could just walk right past them. We wouldn't even have to run.
Interestingly, Barbara's early observation proves to be true. By simply evading the zombies, Barbara escapes to safety, sometimes without even wasting bullets. As for the fate of our lead, Ben, he's mortally wounded during a final shootout and bleeds out. By morning, he becomes a zombie as well. And when he's discovered, he's killed, which sucks because it would have been great to see Ben survive this nightmare. Ultimately, the remake offers up some grim commentary on the human condition.
They're us. We're them, and they're us.
The original Night of the Living Dead was created during the Civil Rights Movement. The subtext within was subdued. In the remake, however, social commentary and the idea that human nature at its core is violent is put right out there. Even Barbara, our surviving hero, succumbs to her darker urges in a pretty blatant manner.
There's another one for the fire.
Since the release of this film, there's been tons of other zombie movies, TV shows, and video games, many of which have been influenced by Night of the Living Dead. So it's telling that this remake, which was mostly ignored by audiences and hammered by critics at the time, has actually aged pretty well. And from what I see online, many in the horror community seem to feel the same way. I highly recommend 1990's Night of the Living Dead. It's a reimagining of a classic with plenty of nods to the original that also works on its own merits. As I mentioned earlier, this film has gone on to earn a cult following, so clearly the remake got a lot right. I'd rate Night of the Living Dead 4 out of 5 rotting zombies. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this, hit that sub button, hit that like button, and you may want to hit that notification bell as well. Every bit of support really helps the channel and is totally appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and do your best to avoid those horny zombies. Later.
Bunch of yo-yos!
There's no escape.